We are with Professor Avram Ehrlich's Symbolism of the 10 Plagues, Exodus 10.
The plague of hail is beyond me. I don't think that I understand it. It may have been the first plague. It may have been by chance. It may have been the interpretation of an existing natural occurrence and put into the context of punishment. It seems that as a natural occurrence, it would have put into motion, so as a domino effect, several of the other plagues that followed. For instance, we go through here, and at the end of the plague of hail, we find that there's only left the hail destroys all the flax on the budding flax, and also destroys the barley, and there's left just the wheat and the spelt, and then comes the plague of locusts, which will destroy the very last left commodity in Egypt. It's going to destroy that too. The wiping out of Egypt was theatre. It was drama at its best. It seemed to be a translation of a play. It seems possibly that these 10 plagues were written in hieroglyphics, first played out. It seems that there is a Genesis story occurring here, but the Genesis story is in counter-distinction to the Genesis of the book of Genesis. Here it is the wiping out, the decimation of Egypt on every front, in all its greatness, from the Nile to the creatures that the wizards cultivated, and now it is going to be hit now with a series of other plagues which are going to wipe out its agriculture. And just as in the story of creation, words are important, so too the words here in the destruction are important. And we saw that in one of the plagues was the plague of Arov, which we said was hunting or control, but it is also a form of weaving. A part of the cross-section of weaving is one way and another way, part of a net when you catch something. And here we see that Arov, and the other part of the weave is called Shati, which means to cross-sect, to capture, to make a net around. So here you see that a net is forming around the Pharaoh in terms of, and around his heart, in terms of a dramatic playoff against the powers of the Pharaoh and against the powers of Moses. Yes, it is this word, Shati. It is, and this with the previous plague, which was Arav, means to sew together. Shati would be like in a fold of a dress. You would take two of the parts of the fold and bring them together into two, and then you would sew them together. Or it is almost like taking the pinhead and a thread and sewing it through the thread. It is that form of knitting or sewing or combining together, which takes a lot of technical knowledge, but once done is very obvious. So Shativa Erev would be like something is being sewn together through the plagues. Atotai, my letters. So my letters or my signs are being shown, are being demonstrated to the Pharaoh. But the language here is very clear. There is a technical methodology of sewing together letters. So this, in fact, is truly demonstrating that the power which is going to face off the mighty Pharaoh is one of letters and words. And so why is he doing this? Well, why are these letters being sown? For what purpose? And he says, Bekilbo Laman, it would be in his heart. Laman, in order that you will tell in the ears of your children, of your child, and the son of your child, what I did in Egypt, how I ransacked Egypt with my letters, which I put or I named in them. And you will know that I am God, the Tetragrammaton, the master conjugator of words. And now that it was established what's in their toolbox, it goes and says that Moses and Aaron come to the Pharaoh, and they will say to him, "Thus says the Tetragrammaton, the God of the Hebrews. Until when will you torture? And you should send my people." But God of the Hebrews, that word, God of the Hebrews, it appears again. The Hebrews, what does it mean? The root is over, to pass, to it's a form of refugee, like Abraham was the Hebrew, the sojourner, the passer through, the traverser from country to country, who crossed over several rivers to arrive at the land of Canaan, the journeyer, the stranger, the refugee. So here, the God of the refugee, of the nomad, of the one who is going to leave, the one who left from many and several places. This was the God that Moses and Aaron were speaking for. How long will you torture? The great mighty empire of Egypt would be torturing this nomadic small group that was seeking its independence. So the God of the Hebrews says, "How long will you refrain from answering before me? Send my people that they will serve me." The ultimate question, how long does it take to convince you? How long does it take to change your mind? What needs to be done for one to change perspective or to change direction? The ultimate question that can be asked to the person in a learning process. It is certainly for the Pharaoh, but it is deeply individual. It's a deeply individual question. It seems that truly the theme here is ego, is arrogance, and it is the return, and it is the recognition of mistakes, and it is the call to the humbling of the heart. It seems to be a theme which traverses the entire story, which lends to the suggestion that many of these stories in the book of Exodus, and indeed in the entire Bible, are Genesis stories of ideas which have emerged, and a story was composed around it. "And if you do not let my people go, I will bring to you locusts in your borders." This word locust actually is almost like a play on words in several ways. The root word is rav, or great, or many. There are 8,000 different species of locusts, and the locusts can be eaten. They're actually a very good fried and boiled and fried food, and a lot of protein. And they're very diverse, and they swarm, and they say that there is no king to the locusts because they cannot be controlled. So it is the opposite of control. It demonstrates the counter distinction to order. And it shows the crumbling of the Egyptian kingdom. And it will be to your border. Very interestingly, the word arbe is counter distinction to the promise of Abraham. In the promise of Abraham, the Hebrew word for that I will multiply your seed and you will be a blessing to the whole world. Here, it is the word, there's a play on word, that it means the locusts in your borders. So the blessing of Abraham, that they will be a blessing to the whole world, and the continuation of that blessing was that their enemies that the children of Abraham would inherit their enemies. Here, the enemies are being destroyed in their borders by the locusts. And this locust is going to eat everything that was left over from the hail, and is going to destroy your trees and your vegetation of your field, and they're going to fill your houses and the houses of your servants and all the houses of Egypt, and it will be like your fathers and your fathers' fathers have not seen on the land since the day of the beginnings of the country. The tragedy would be absolute, and this is the promise. And Moses leaves Pharaoh, and the tension is brimming now. And the servants of the Pharaoh, the magicians, tell the Pharaoh, this is a great obstacle. Let those people go. Let them go. For Yavdu, and they will worship their tetragrammaton, their god, before you discover that everything has been lost in Egypt. And Moses and Aaron are sitting to the Pharaoh. So Moses is developing negotiations with the Pharaoh, and he's sitting together with him, and they're discussing their children. And he's saying, who will come with us? And he's saying, well, our children will come, and also our possessions will go, and everything which belongs to us, and our offspring, and the offspring of our cattle, they're all going to go. And then Pharaoh goes and says, well, God bless you, God be with you, and yes, I will send you, but your children, they will get in your way. They will be bad for your faces. It shouldn't be so. You, the men, go. You serve the God. That's what you want. That's what you're requesting. But, your children will stay here. And then he told them to leave. He was capturing the children. And in contradistinction to that, he was going to get the swarm of locusts, which was going to wipe out the rest of Egypt. And God said to Moses, lift up your staff over Egypt and bring about the locusts, and they will cover the land, and they will eat the trees and the greenery. An easterly breeze blew all day and all night, and the locusts filled the land of Egypt, and they were throughout the borders of Egypt, and it was very heavy, and they destroyed everything, and they made the land dark, and they ate all the greenery and all the fruits, and left that were left over after the hail, and nothing. There were no trees, and there was no grass in the fields over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh rushed over to call Moses and Aaron, and he said, I have made a mistake this time to your God. And now, lift up and forgive my mistake this time. Turn to your God. Pray for me. And stop this death from me. This is the opposite of creation. This is disaster. This is deconstruction. This is everything that is not supposed to be. And it seems to result from the egotistical and the stubbornness and the unwillingness of the Pharaoh to hear the voice of Moses, of his magicians, of his advisors, and of the people groaning. It was a matter of denial. Not the Nile, but denial. These 10 plagues are 10 forewarners, telling the human condition to be careful, that the human condition in society can be ruined on countless levels and countless layers, in one level that will cause another and another. And each time there are ways to keep away or to change the course, and even described here on several options were left to the Pharaoh to change his course, and he took none of it. The smartest and the most powerful man alive, exposed for so long to the brightest, most intelligent, enlightened person alive, and he could not bring the sum together to draw the conclusions necessary. He was required to go through 10 tragedies that at every single step of the way could have been avoided, but it was predicted would not be avoided. And these are the great abysses that the human condition, if one wants to personalize the analogy, the human condition can bridge to recognize how they can avoid tragedy and by steer off the inevitable. The biblical prose is so interesting that, like a locust can come, a swarm of locusts can come so quickly, and then they can blow away and be wiped out until there is not one left on the land, and it is remarkable that they could have appeared and left. That analogy is being used here, that just as one can turn in contrite acknowledgement, so quickly can a problem go away. The acknowledgement and recognition of a problem and a solution, or even of a change of approach, can often change reality. The story opens that these wonders are all going to occur in order to teach to your children some wonders, something profound, something which will resonate throughout the generations for all times. This surely cannot be about the history of an ancient empire, irrelevant to even to the mummies which have now been ransacked from there. Surely it represents something which is universal, about the spirit of humankind, about the greatest spirit of humankind to its own detriment, which is the ego, and the breaking of the ego. And surely it does not really have to do with Pharaoh and Moses and the staffs, but it's got to do with our own struggles and our own ability to learn, to live and work in accord, to create great things, and also to learn how to manage the discord and the forewarning that the not managing the discord in one's personal life will cause the absolute destruction and destruction on many levels which can all be prevented. So the management of one's psychological structures and inner structures, the Pharaoh and the Moses, and to see in the relationship that we have with people, to take the advice of the Moses in our surroundings and of the magicians and of the circumstances of the people towards betterment, towards the relationship betterment, and towards the betterment of underlings, towards the betterment of those who are dependent, or to those that can be forced and can be moved, because the cycle is interdependent, as with all the species which were affected in the plagues of Egypt.